The War of Caernarvon Crescent.
Agamemnon was outside the back garden. He was still learning his boundaries and marking his territory. I observed him sniffing around the whole perimeter fence, probing it for weaknesses. He would occasionally start digging around the post to casually see if he could get past the 6-foot fence, but at this stage, with him being a pup, he just couldn't do this. Once he had finished his failed tunnelling attempt, he would squat and pee to mark his boundary. At this point, he had simply not learned to cock his leg and spray. As soon as Agamemnon was finished, I would go to the shed, pull out the shovel and fill the recently dug holes, just so I could say that the fence was secured. This would go on every day. Not only would I fill the holes, but also scoop up the dog shit and fling it into the bushes. It just made life easier not having to tread lightly, avoiding the minefield of dog shit. One day after Agamemnon did his daily routine of taking a dump and probing the fence, I looked out of the kitchen window and noticed him laying on the grass, sprawled out like a slob. Normally I wouldn't question it, but today he was pissing down with rain. To me it felt odd. Agamemnon, like most dogs, would not sunbathe in the rain. I walked outside and saw Agamemnon panting frantically but not having the energy to move. It was that bad he couldn't even lift his head up to acknowledge his name when I spoke to him. Laying next to Agamemnon was a half-chewed steak, and I feared the worst. Some cunts poisoned my dog. I didn't toss him a steak, so someone must have tossed it to him without me looking. I picked up Agamemnon, and it was lucky he wasn't fully grown, because I knew I would have struggled had he been fully grown. I took him inside and laid him on the kitchen floor. I ran into the living room, ripping the throw off the sofa to wrap my poor dog up to keep him warm. I pulled out my phone and dialed the vets as I ran back to the garden to pick up his half-chewed steak. By the time the vets picked up the phone, I was back in the house, bagging the evidence into a sandwich bag. Within a minute of me explaining to the vets what was happening, they're telling me to get Agamemnon to them ASAP. I hung up and rushed Agamemnon to the car, picking up the evidence bag on my way out and promptly sped off to the vets. I pulled up to the vets and Agamemnon was sprawled over the back seat of the car. I picked him up and kicked the door shut behind me. I didn't have time to lock the car. I just left it there knowing that the car was insured. I darted along the path to the vets. I kicked the door open and barreled inside. I went up to the reception desk and the receptionist guided me through to the treatment room. I placed Agamemnon onto the table and handed the bagged up steak to the vet. So, I said, I found the dog laying in the rain and this steak was lying next to him. I never gave him this steak, so in my opinion I think someone's deliberately poisoned him. The vet opened up the baggie and dropped the steak onto the counter opposite the operating table. He examined the steak and found a few incisions. "Look at this," said the vet over his shoulder. I walked over and the vet was pulling out pill after pill from his half-eaten steak. In total there are 5 pills recovered from the leftover steak. "So it isn't poison," the vet went on to say. "He's been drugged and it's fortunate I can identify it." The vet picked up one of the recovered pills and took it over to his computer. He loaded up the program and typed the code from the pill stamped onto the search bar. In less than a second, the result flashed up. It was diazepam. The vet left the computer and gave Agamemnon a stomach pump and tried to get out any undigested drugs out of his system. He then hooked Agamemnon up onto a drip to keep his fluids topped up. "I'm going to keep him in for overnight for observation, and I'll give you a call tomorrow morning to update you of the situation," said the vet. I shook the man's hand and went to the reception desk to fill out the paperwork, and I gave them my credit card details in advance. To me, it didn't matter, as I would be claiming it back on insurance. The next thing I needed to do was go to the police station and report this incident. I just knew who it was, but there was absolutely no evidence. I just knew that nothing would be done by the police, but I also knew that the insurance wouldn't pay out if there wasn't a crime reference number given. The police station was a 20-minute walk away, as parking is notoriously shit down my road. Had I driven, I wouldn't be able to park up again, so travelling on foot was a must. I walked up to the police station foyer and rattled open the door. There was a lad in the chair looking at me like he was really uncomfortable due to the slightly damaged, bent-up furniture. He was wearing a ripped-up blue hoodie with matching tracky bottoms. His trainers were an off-white set of Reebok Classics. Well, I say off-white. They were once white and now covered from toe to heel in general street dirt. Also, one of his soles was flopping off. This goonish lad was covered in Argos gold. He was adorned with a cheap, plastic-looking gold-plated chain hanging off from his neck. There was a second chain behind the first one that looked cheaper than the first. The second chain had a plasticky-looking pendant on with the name Dad etched into it. Dad, I thought to myself, I've got socks older than this chavvy-looking shit. There was a tatty and dishevelled looking hooker. Her greasy yet blonde looks looked like they hadn't seen a brush in a lifetime. Her makeup, if you could call it that, looked like it was scraped off a dying pensioner and superglued onto her face. She had Ronald McDonald style lipstick and eyeshadow in the shape of a fist. Well, on second thoughts, it looked like more of a double black eye. She was wearing the shortest of short boob tubes, with her tits sagging over her abdominal tire, which was in turn flopping over her overtly short skirt. She was wearing thigh-high boots that could have gone with a bit of a polish. Well, 2 tins of polish. I would even doubt that these boots would ever look nice again. She also had a strange odour about her, which one could only really describe as cunt rot. She too was sat on an uncomfortable chair with her legs crossed, and I was quite worried that she might do a recreation of that infamous beaver moment from the movie Basic Instinct. But if she opened up her legs to swap over a cross-leg position, a depraved HR Giga alien would have lunged out towards me. Behind a tatty scratched-up plexiglass window was an uninterested police officer looking into space whilst chewing gum. I approached the lady and waited for her to not acknowledge me. After about a minute, there's still no acknowledgement, so I knocked on the window and engaged me with conversation. "Hi there," I said. "I'd like to report a crime." The police officer looked at me like I'd just ruined her daydream and treated me with utter contempt. "What is it?" she barked with a "I don't give a fuck what the problem is" scowl on her chops. I took a deep breath knowing that this was going to be more hassle than it was worth. But I was here now and I had to go through with it. Someone laced a steak with drugs and threw it into my garden for my dog to eat. My dog is half dead and down the vet's fighting for his life. The police officer reached over her shoulder and picked up a pen and paper. "Okay," she said with a tone of uninterest. "What are your details?" So I gave her my name, my address, my phone number, my email and my account of what happened. "There isn't anyone able to investigate at the moment," she said, "but here is your crime reference number. I will contact you in due course," she said as she slid a sheet of paper under the plexiglass. "Fuck you very much," went the voice in my head, but unfortunately it came out as "thank you very much." I took the small sheet of paper and left the police station. Just as I expected, nothing would be done about this. I never even got a follow-up phone call from the police. But luckily, as I had a crime reference number, the insurance paid out, and best of all, Agamemnon was back with me the next day. I would now have to be more vigilant in the future.
Thank you for listening to the War of Caernarvon Crescent. If you've enjoyed this production from SFX Media, why not check out more content by clicking the link in the description below. Until next time, soldier.